All right, so we're doing something a little different today. I had requests after getting a little more involved in our social media, doing more, Instagram reels and Facebook posts, and people were requesting you should do something more long form. Like maybe you should do a podcast or something a little more detailed because it's interesting. You get a lot of comments of some of the things we talk about, and it's hard to have that conversation.
Yep.
So today we thought we'd try a one-off. Maybe it's a recurring thing. A little chat between Brad Macdonald and Tony
Sachdev, yeah, we're from REMAX All Stars.
and we're going to talk about some real estate stuff. And we thought it would be really interesting to do this in a way that's not just to listen, hey, new listings, that's not exciting, but the stuff that doesn't make it into glossy listings and what really happens behind the scenes and little mistakes that cost people money. I mean, there's so much to talk about. There's always deals that go sideways or on the brink of going sideways.
Yeah.
Things that, a single word on a form that can, cost you hundreds of dollars.
Brad, you bring up a good point. I mean, I think the general population thinks that a lot of times they think that, realtors, guys, what do you really do? And I don't think they see all that behind the scenes stuff that we kind of guide and handle. Stuff that can be really, really, really costly if done incorrectly. So many say, I'll just get my lawyer to do the paperwork or whatever. Lawyers are very important to the transaction. They're the ones that handle the closing. But a lot of times I've seen lawyers, especially if people say, I'm just going to use my own lawyer to buy a house. I want to buy something off market. I'm going off topic here a little bit. I mean, but I've seen lawyers who have used forms that have been from, 10 years ago. And every year our forms get updated. The forms, lawyers go through them, the standard wording and stuff. But I've seen people go directly to a lawyer to, they're buying something off market and the lawyer's using a completely dated document. So it's, we don't see those behind the scenes things for many deals, and the more balanced markets typically see, more problems. I find, when things are going well, everybody's like, things are flying off the shelf. People are just getting deals done and they're moving on to the next one. But when things are balanced, like we're in a market right now, we're finding that the negotiating that happens to come through it, having the right paperwork and the right clauses and things like that is so important.
Well,
we just had one very, very recent situation, right?
We had a deal where you have agents, unfortunately, that don't necessarily use the right form. I mean,
it's true. No, listen, I mean,
it's always difficult when you're talking about other agents, right? I mean, we have this gap in understanding. Sometimes we're dealing with agents that are genuinely not great. They're just not that great at their job. Other ones, we have some great young agents or new agents that just haven't been trained properly. I mean, I think a lot of people realize that there was a fairly low bar to get into this industry. And there's a lot of agents out there that just don't know or weren't trained enough on how to do some of the things that are right. When it's a cookie cutter deal, this stuff is very transactional and it's very straightforward.
Yeah, it's straightforward.
We have less and less cookie cutter deals nowadays.
Correct.
Housing types have changed. We have all these wild permutations on condominiums that it's a condo in a building or a condo that's a standalone detached house, but it has a, shared garage or driveway or snow. But there's all these different things that agents don't understand, but they're playing with millions of dollars of people's money.
It's so true. No, so this example, if we want to talk about it, was, and I think you raise a good point there about newer agents versus, and a little self promo here that you and I have both been in the business a very, very long time. Combined, I think 50 years between the two of us. What we've noticed, I mean, if I look back in the 90s when I first started in this business, the term POTL, POTL, a purchase of tied land type of development, wasn't very common. And what those are basically used those townhouse complexes that a lot of builders are building, because builders are now building for density. So they're building tighter homes, taller homes, but they're putting them in a smaller little pocket. And as a result, the driveways and the pathways and stuff, the city can't get their plows in. So it essentially becomes like a shared condominium. You still own the property. It's still a freehold property. You're still responsible for everything. But there's a corporation that gets involved that handles snowplow, garbage removal, sometimes landscaping.
It's like condos light.
Condos light. That's a great way to put it.
They don't deal with the building, but they deal with all the ancillaries.
Exactly. And so when you're part of that, there's a monthly fee that's involved. And as a result of that, when you're putting an offer or you're selling a home with those fees that are there, the POTL fees, you've got to do it on the right form. And so we had this property on the market, and our listing, we try and make things as, as foolproof as we can for any potential buyer's agent, right? So in our listing, it clearly says use form 111 multiple times, and not just once. It actually says it 3 times in the listing that this is the correct offer form to use, because sometimes it is, when you want to do something quickly, you might just use the wrong form. But the fact that we kind of guided the agents through it, and still received this offer, and our clients were thrilled to get the offer. It was a workable deal. Unfortunately, I had to go back and say, guys, this offer is actually,
It's wrong.
it's wrong.
You can't
It's
sign this and sell your house.
It's not even the proper offer. It's on the wrong form completely. So I went back to the agent and I said, look, I'm happy because of, timing. I think the offer came in like on a late evening, and I'm like, look, just in order to save time, I'm willing to even redo this offer for you on the correct form and make it like a seller's offer. But she was willing to go back and get it signed that evening, put it on the right form.
You got lucky.
She apologized and said, "Oh, you're right. My bad. I should have put it on the right form. I didn't." But having to train. So these are things that agents really need to, and I think consumers need the guidance of good agents that are out there.
Well, this is what we talk about when, I mean, not just selling ourselves, but any reputable agents. The difference for people and consumers that they might not see behind the scenes is the reality of the chaos some of these agents create when they don't do things right, when they're not giving the right forms. Or a lot of these deals still happen, and thank God one of the agents involved is good enough to pick up the ball and run with it, or guide and get this thing to the finish line. But I mean, we had an opportunity last year that we sold a great property in North York, and the same thing. We have an agent that had great intentions, but didn't understand the rules, doesn't understand contract law, and unfortunately gave his buyer some pretty poor advice.
So we are, as agents, we're in an interesting kind of situation. We're almost there, required to, we draft up the paperwork, and we've done this over years of experience and stuff. We have contracts that the real estate board provides us that cover the how legal transactions should occur. But then there are a number of clauses that are added in there for protections of buyers and sellers, right? That we as agents, again, through experience, through the uniqueness of the deal, or specific to the deal, will be able to create and put those right clauses in there that protect the clients that are involved. One of the key things here, and this has been a discussion where I think agents don't, is what the term irrevocability of an offer is. Now, if you make an offer, there has to be a kind of end date for that offer. It can't be an unlimited offer. You put an offer in and say, a month later, the guy comes back and says, "Oh, I'm going to take your offer," and stuff. No.
My offer is valid for a fixed period of time.
Fixed period of time. But when you're in that fixed period of time, you can't then pull back and renege that offer, right? So the irrevocability kind of protects the integrity of the deal for that period of time. So we had a situation where our client's beautiful home, this offer came in, and it was a genuinely interested family. They wrote us a beautiful letter, showed us a picture of their family, pictured themselves living in there, and they wanted the house so badly that they gave us an offer with no conditions. Now, we had already done a pre-inspection. The house was in great shape. They were willing to, their financing, it seemed like, was already sorted out. So they gave us a firm deal with an irrevocable, I think it was at midnight that night, or 11:59 p.m. Our clients they were traveling, right, Brad?
They were abroad. Yeah.
They were abroad. They were in Croatia. So being in Croatia, there was a time difference and whatnot. So the offer we got, you had, I think, sent it off to our clients. They were reviewing it. They had questioned, the price. Do you think there might be room for any negotiation there? I went back to the agent and said, look, our clients are thinking about this, but, is there room for negotiating? Clients said, let me talk, the agent said, let me talk to my clients. You, in the meantime, were chatting with them. And they, I guess, as a family, agreed that, no, you know what? This is a good offer, firm deal. We're okay with the price. Let's accept it.
Yeah, send it through DocuSign. They're traveling abroad. They're excited because they basically have their house sold.
Yeah, they were excited. And in between the paperwork getting signed and coming back and forth, the agent called and said, "Oh, actually, you know what? My clients are not willing to come up anymore in price, and they want to back out of the deal. They actually don't want to accept the deal, or they don't want. They're withdrawing their offer." Well, you gave us an irrevocable offer till 11:59 p.m. that evening.
There is no concept of pulling back your
pulling
offer.
back, withdrawing an offer. And that's the legal rules. These aren't our rules. These are contract law. This is in the contract. It says you cannot revoke the offer. But if it's not explained correctly by an agent, some agents might actually think that they can just walk over. Buyers might actually think that they can actually walk away from a deal.
We have window dressing.
We do indeed. We've got fans today. Look at that one. She's holding a banana. I don't know. She Oh, those stairs.
We have
Oh,
an audience behind the
we
camera. This
do.
is
We do.
fantastic.
We do. So they were hoping that they could just pull out of the deal, but the offer was already expected. So I had to go back to this agent and say, listen, I appreciate that, but there is an irrevocable, and congratulations, our clients have accepted the deal. And he went back and said, no, you know what? No, my clients decided they don't want to buy the house. So I think we had to step up and say, look, we got to guide you here that an irrevocable means you can't pull back on that offer.
And this is where I think the education is lacking. I don't think these agents realize the risk that they're putting their clients in.
Yeah.
And we talked about this at the time. It's like, look, this is a lovely young family that was looking at the home. I know they're excited. Maybe there's other options that he had somehow suggested. Well, put offers on everything. I mean,
Right.
you never know what guidance they have, but I don't think they realize their exposure. We know they had limited funds. They've been pre-approved for a mortgage, but they have their down payment. But if this deal went sideways because these people decided to back out and we had to pursue other opportunities and put it back on the market, if we got less money, they would be entitled to.
They'd be
They
held
would
to that
basically
difference. Yeah.
Yes, they would
Yeah.
owe the difference plus court costs and fees and whatnot. That would probably eat up all of that down payment these people have been sitting on. They wouldn't be in the housing market.
Well, we did have to get the lawyer involved, right? I mean, obviously the lawyer had to write a letter, and I think it wasn't that their intention was there. And fast forward now, we look back, and it actually ended up being a great deal.
Yeah.
The buyer and seller, it turned out they actually had common friends. They were excited about finally moving into the house, but I think in the moment, these are emotional decisions, but that's just it. They need to be well thought out. Because there are genuine parties involved here, and buying and selling is not something you can just kind of choose to back out when you want to back out, right? And they did eventually. They agreed, they understood. I think it was the explanation they got from their lawyer, from our client's lawyer, stating that, look, guys, if you understand that this is signed under seal, so a deposit isn't necessary, but they were refusing to bring the deposit.
I think it's an interesting point, though, that a lot of people aren't, and when I mean people, a lot of consumers aren't getting the education they require from their agent explaining how does a deal work?
Right.
How does this process work when I actually sign this offer?
Yeah.
And a lot of people have this feeling, and you read this on the internet and Facebook, that well, if I don't bring the deposit, then the deal is dead and I can walk away. That's not the case.
No,
When
it's
you're
not.
signing an offer to this property, if it's a firm deal like Tony's talking about here, you're signing under seal. And once that deal is accepted by both parties, you have a binding contract, assuming all the terms are legal. If you decide not to bring the deposit, it doesn't mean the deal is dead.
No.
It just means you're in breach of contract. You're in breach of that deal. It doesn't nullify the deal in any way whatsoever.
Right.
So yeah, you still owe that money at some point, and there's going to be losses and court fees and all that.
Yeah. Now
It's too bad, because I think our education system for agents is what's causing these problems. I don't think they even truly understand what they're allowed to do, what the real rules are. And to me, a lot of this is driven by social media. The problem is a lot of these agents are kind of getting their education from Facebook groups because their brokerages and brokers of record aren't giving them the training when they're starting off. And they've done these simple deals. So, hey, I did 10 deals my first year, and they're all simple. So you think you know it all.
Yeah, and again, when the market was, and we all know that the market has adjusted over the last couple of years, right? Interest rates have been a big part of that. So things have slowed down. I think this is what kind of differentiates those who have some experience, agents that have experience, versus agents that are newer or less educated in many ways. Now, look, our governing body, the Real Estate Council in Ontario, requires us to go through ongoing education, which, I remember when it first started as an agent, I'm like, I don't need this,
We know it all.
We know it all. We know it all. But it really and truly is a valuable tool, and I think a valuable requirement, because we are constantly changing. The deals are changing. The product is changing. Like we said, POTL type properties didn't exist
our
20
legal
plus
obligations to
and our legal obligations. So,
consumers has changed dramatically over the last years.
yeah.
So talking about bad agents or poorly educated agents or
Wow.
poorly trained agents, I got to talk about, I think it'd be fun to talk about marketing gone wrong, because we always see
Yeah.
some bad marketing. And we don't
Yeah.
just mean, the obvious, the bad photos, the bad photoshops where you have the 86-year-old agent that's been in the market, working here for 30 years, but looks like she's 17 years old on her.
In the
All right,
in her on her business card.
You're,
Yeah.
you're allowed to misrepresent that,
Yeah.
I
That's
guess.
exactly why I don't put my face on my business
Right.
card, right?
But Halloween this year was a new low, in my opinion, that we saw in our neighborhood, that there was a local realtor who was handing out Halloween candy with their business cards stapled to these little bags.
These are to the kids, right?
To the kids.
Yeah.
And we talked about this. Trying to think, is this genius?
Yeah.
Is this completely inappropriate? What do you think? What do you think of this strategy?
I think. Listen, I unfortunately, and I think it's a terrible strategy. Halloween is Halloween. Let the kids be kids. Don't market, advertise, to children in hopes that they'll take it back to their parents.
Have this REMAX candy.
Here you go. I get it. Listen, marketing, we have REMAX mugs, we have REMAX, water bottle. Like everybody's got their branding and their marketing. But I think there is a time and a place, and this is where I want consumers to understand is that the bar we should be held to a lot higher bar. I don't want us to fall into that kind of, and not to take away from car sales, but whatever, like the old saying, like a used car salesman type of mentality, which I think a lot of people kind of, with stunts like that, they start thinking that.
It's terrible. And our marketing in general is coming under more and more scrutiny because, as you know, everybody's using AI as the keyword and everything now. And agents are relying more and more on these AI tools without really being cognizant of the rules.
Yeah.
One of the big problems we're seeing in the industry is you're looking at these houses that I'm intimately familiar with our areas and saying that house has a tree in front of it.
That's right.
The listing photo, there's no tree. So they photoshopped out physical things from the property,
which I don't think you're allowed to do.
You're not allowed to,
right?
Do, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
Or there's a new listing in Unionville that came out, which I haven't shared with Tony yet. That came out this week, and I'm looking at it like, okay, they have photoshopped into the driveway a Cybertruck, which is wrong for so many other reasons, but it doesn't even look remotely accurate. It looks like a cartoon thing sitting in the driveway. And I'm not sure what the intent is, but it's just horrific marketing on so many levels.
Well, we see it with a lot of the Twilight photos. Suddenly it's in the dead of winter, but it looks like it's, a beautiful summer's evening.
Overly photoshopped.
A little bit overly photoshopped and stuff. So I know this is a criticism. We try not to, in our marketing, we try and portray things a little bit as accurate as possible. I think we're required now to label if things are being virtually staged or AI generated and whatnot. I think it's best practice to actually do that. But to physically remove things that are actually there is a misrepresentation, right? It really shouldn't be done. It started with really, I think years ago with not artificial, but fisheye lenses and wide angle lenses that were too wide. And people would walk into houses going like, this photo does
little
not
misrepresentation.
It's misrepresentation.
We like it to look accurate. We want it to put it in its best light. So we're going to make it light and bright and clean. But risk now for us is we have clients that say, hey, I'll give you some photos in my backyard. Like, you know what? I can't use your photos because I don't know if you Photoshop them or use an AI tool on your phone, whatever. Like, it has to be accurate, and that's on us. And we're diligent about this. That's why we do our photography the way we do. And we take a lot of time. And I'm not agents. Sorry, clients are sometimes asked, hey, can you just Photoshop out that stain out of the carpet because I'm going to fix that later.
Yeah.
Like, well,
I can't do that
because if you don't,
yeah. You tie into something that's kind of near and dear and important, in my opinion, is the importance of prepping and marketing and staging, getting a house ready for sale. I can't I can't say enough about how important that process is.
First impressions are everything, but they have to be accurate first impressions.
There was that house in Pickering that we had sold last year. Our client had was in a situation where had to move and had a lot of stuff right at the end of the day, and part of the home was like they had updated some of the things, but a lot of the stuff was still in need of repair, I guess, right, and decluttering and whatever. And
It needed TLC.
it needed some TLC, absolutely. Paint, repair work and stuff. Now, the great thing was our client was willing to do that work. Same time we were about to go to market, there was another property that was
Very comparable.
very comparable, same size,
Same neighborhood.
same street,
Well, other end of the street.
other
Yeah.
end of the street, built at the same time, same number of bedrooms, all that kind of stuff. So, and they had set themselves at a price, I remember, that was above what we felt the value was worth.
Yeah.
And they were listed with a big name agent, one of these splashy.
And how did that house present itself?
Very average, right? I mean,
Yeah.
very, very average. Clearly, they had done some decluttering and whatever, but you could tell both houses still being lived in. Our guidance to our client was, listen, there's going to be a little bit of, it might be, let's call it short-term pain, ideally for the long-term gain, right? So I know it's going to seem like we're asking you to do a lot, but this is our experience. This is what we've done over the years. It's a bit of a formula, a bit of a process that we have is prepping and getting ready. It's money well invested if you can do it.
It is tough sometimes when you're talking to clients that are already under a lot of duress. They're trying to get their house ready. They feel they've done everything they need to do. And Tony or myself walk and say, hey, like, this is great what you've done, but you need to do a little bit more.
We're going to recommend a lot more.
And there's always pushback, but you do the best thing you possibly can.
Right.
You give them the best possible
Well,
advice.
we rolled up our sleeves and actually got in there and started to help them too, right? I mean, we were fixing their door and fixing some stuff and moving dirt and furniture around.
And the net result
was we sold at over asking with multiple offers. I think we had 6 offers at the time. We sold for actually more than they ever expected.
Yep.
2 weeks later, that house down the street, I think it was actually one of the buyers that failed on ours.
Yeah. Same agent. So we assume the same buyer.
Yeah. Same agent. You're right. Same agent. It seemed the same buyer. Ended up buying the house down the street because they didn't get this one.
It's like,
and they bought it for 100,000 less.
Yeah. That's a pretty significant difference for comparable homes.
When you're talking homes in the value of 700 to 800,000, $100,000 is a considerable difference. I don't know if there was a way we could turn this camera around because we've got.
There's nothing better than doing a little sit down talk and having an audience in the background.
Right.
There's actually a little costume party happening in our office.
There is with, you would hope. We can't see it. There should be a mirror here next time. All right.
Clearly, they're serving tequila somewhere in this office.
We got a wild goose at the window right now. Yeah, it's too bad that you guys can't see this.
So an interesting thing that's come up in the news lately has been the demise of a major Toronto area, Southern Ontario brokerage. It's been in the news. This brokerage called iPro Realty.
iPro Realty.
Basically was put out of business by one of our governing bodies because they had incorrectly or allegedly incorrectly used trust funds, or the funds that they hold in reserve for a deal. So when you maybe it's a deposit for a pending sale or commissions payable out after our deal. All of our brokerage have to responsibly manage that money, and they only disperse it under direction of a lawyer or a court order.
Correct.
Apparently, these guys for years have been
using the owners of the company. Yeah,
have been using these funds to buy properties, buy boats, cars. I mean, great car collection, personal effects. That shouldn't have been able to happen. It's going to be really interesting to see over the course of an investigation, probably over the next year, of how this happened, how they're able to get their hands on the funds. But the question I got from some clients and people online were asking, like, how does that affect me? For the most part, clients aren't really affected by any of this. Even though some of those funds are missing, the clients and the deals in hand are getting processed. That's all happening. You guys are in the clear. Where the big rigmarole is unfortunately for agents like us, that if you have a deal pending with that brokerage, whether you're buying or selling, there's a good chance that the commissions you may be owed, you're only going to get a fraction of that. As of today, my understanding is that most agents that have deals involved, I don't personally have any, I don't think Tony does either, are getting about half of the commission that they're owed.
That's what they're being offered. I think the regulator is kind of saying you can file a claim for about half of your commission. Correct.
Yeah, and I think the battle is going to go on that at some point they'll get made whole, as they should, because our insurance is supposed to protect us from that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But this shows some of the gaps in, I believe, our legislation and the enforcement of our rules.
Well, I think a big part what was happening, the why it made such big news, because I mean, brokerages have done this in the past, and even though we do get audited as a brokerage, we used to have our own brokerage, for a number of years, and we got audited just in the 10, 12 years, about four every 2, 3 years. Rico, or the Real Estate Council of Ontario, would show up at our door, look to see our books, look at see it, making sure the bank accounts were all, and nothing was being dispersed, incorrectly. I think the why this made news is because iPro was actually audited
Mhm.
months earlier, and the Real Estate Council noticed some irregularities
Didn't seem to
and
really.
didn't seem to do anything or take immediate action to protect, and they kind of let them, okay, you guys got to figure this out, sort it out. And then it got to the point where it had gone bigger than they expected it to go. There
Yeah,
was the losses or the spent money was higher, I think, than they had originally anticipated.
anticipated.
Yeah, and so a lot of agents now are kind of in limbo, and iPro was one of these real estate brokerages that
They catered to a lot of part-time agents, right?
part-time agents, exactly.
Not all of them, but they really had a niche for those guys that did only a couple deals a year, maybe
Correct.
weren't,
No, maybe not full-time
yeah,
brokers. They, pay less fees, and so they were able to attract a lot of agents. So there
yeah.
were, over a
They're the largest,
thousand.
yeah, they're the largest brokerage in the GTA by number of agents. Certainly not by number of deals, but certainly by the number of agents. It's
Yeah. So it
unbelievable.
affects a lot of people. So
And it's too bad because a lot of these part-time agents are probably more harmed by not having that income than
correct. Yeah.
agents
And
that have a lot more in the pipeline.
if you're listen, full-time agents have to invest this a lot of time, energy, and our own resources in. So yeah, you want to be protected with the large brokerage. Hence why we're with REMAX. And the hope is that we'll never be in that kind of situation. So consumers are okay. You guys are lucky. This isn't going to affect you. It does affect a lot of those agents. I actually had one come into my open house that we were doing in Etobicoke, and this is when this was all kind of fresh to them. And I asked them, how is it going? And the agent said, look, I was lucky. I didn't have any upcoming closings that were going on. But he knew some agents who were just about to lose quite a bit of income.
Yeah.
Imagine if I was working for a company and all of a sudden I said, "Hey guys, sales are down this year. You got to take half your salary."
Yeah, no, it's no good. We are doing stuff to protect our clients, but I know we've kind of changed how we operate and do business. Historically, and what's normal for our industry is that when we make an offer on a property, if we're the buyer's agent and we're making an offer on a listing, typically the listing brokerage will be the one that holds the funds or holds a deposit that goes with any deal.
Right.
Now we're being a little more conscious of what's happened, and if there's one, there's going to be more than one when we look into this. I'm sure there's other brokerages that are playing some fancy games as well that we'll find out through all this.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is suggesting there's nothing wrong with it. We're just doing things a little different. We may put in an offer on a property as a buyer's agent, but have our own brokerage hold the deposit. And
Yeah.
that's certainly completely doable, completely acceptable, completely legal. It's just not common. But that's going to give us a little more protection because I have faith in our brokerage being a large establishment that's been around for a long time, and we know.
Listen, I think the key thing here is that whether it's the seller's brokerage, the buyer's brokerage, whether it's a lawyer's office holding it, as long as those monies are held in trust, they're supposed to be protected because it's technically that money belongs to the buyer until closing, where it gets transferred to the seller. Otherwise, nobody's supposed to have access to it. That's what trust in trust means.
So, when talking about protecting the buyers or sellers,
Right.
we should talk a little bit about now how an inspection can actually
Oh,
jeopardize a deal. Inspections are great. We advise all of our clients, both buying and selling,
yep.
to get an inspection or a pre inspection because it's the only time a lot of these people are really going to have a real, you know, candid look at their home. I mean, how many times, Tony, when's the last time you've been up in your
Yeah, I
attic?
was just gonna say
Yeah, never.
I have not,
Exactly.
and I think well maybe once I did go.
They're wise for many reasons,
Yeah,
but especially we're all aware that when you're buying a new house that you're not familiar with and you're going to spend $1 million or more or less to have an inspection to know what you're getting into. And there have been some cases where deals have gone
yeah,
sideways
Brad. I
with great intentions from people
yeah.
that
Listen, I think we should preface this that look, inspections are visual inspections. We can't necessarily see behind walls and all that, but there are some, hiring the right inspector and not, your dad because he happens to be in construction.
this comes
Um,
out to making sure you have subject matter experts.
correct.
And I think this is the point here is that just because somebody is well versed in construction or well versed in plumbing because they've done a lot of renos, it doesn't mean they're necessarily qualified from an inspection standpoint or knowing exactly what's current, especially when you're inspecting a brand new build with changes to the building code and things they haven't seen. What's an arc fault? What's a sump pump? Whatever these things are, they
Yeah.
may not have seen 10 years ago.
No, I had a situation one time where it was this was a custom built home in a really, up and coming area of North York that was kind of changing. All these little small bungalows being torn down and put into these monster mansions. My clients were we'd conditionally purchased the home. It's a gorgeous home, custom done. The builder actually had a young student who was doing his master's in construction management, and this house was his thesis. So this guy lived in the shed in the backyard, and was there every single day to make sure construction of this home was done correctly, because this was ultimately for his master's degree. So we had the house inspected, and I noticed it too. Again, as agents, once we've been in the business long enough, we know certain things to look at, and then we'll get it confirmed by the home inspector. That I noticed that the sump pump in this particular area, they required sump pumps because they don't have proper stormwater sewers. That the water level was a little high. And so I kind of questioned it. We had the home inspector go in there. I'm thinking this home inspector, who I've used in the past, who's, professional guy. But in this particular case, I think he had seen it for the first time. And he was also like, that's curious. Why is the water level of this sump pump where it is? Now, we both looked at it, said there's got to be a logical explanation on this. However, the home inspector in this particular case reached out to as he was talking to our clients, the buyers, he turns to them and says, I just want to make sure your house is not on a underground lake or a river. And I just looked at him like, hold on a second. We're in a subdivision that's been around 50 years at Bayview and Steeles. There's no underground river or lake here. All the homes in this area have sump pumps.
This is not farmland.
This is not farmland. This is not swampland. This is not wetland. So, that comment was enough. Just that one comment was enough to get my client second. Like, are we on an aquifer? Are we on an underground water source? Brad, if I tell you what, the solution was, I got a call at 3 a.m. from that master's student project manager saying, Tony, I figured out what it was. This kid couldn't sleep. And he goes, I figured out what the issue was. Because I didn't want dirt and sand blocking the bottom of my pump, I raised it up on some bricks, which then, as the sump pump sits inside of a tank, it was now higher.
Raise the water level.
So it has to raise the water level that much higher in order for the pump to get ejected. The minute he took those bricks out and put the pump where it was supposed to be,
Back to normal.
back to normal. And they never had a problem. They did end up buying the house and they never had an issue. So hiring the right person is definitely a must. And somebody who we go back to experience time and time again, that in this industry, it's a big investment that people are making. I think it's so important to have like the most experienced people that you can find, in order to, protect that investment that you're,
100%.
and it's not foolproof. Listen, I'm not here to say that we're 100%, we're going to be like, we're superheroes and we're going to figure everything out. No, but at least the chances of having issues in the future could be diminished.
I think the most important thing here is just understanding what you are buying. It is okay to buy a house that has a sump pump problem or has old rummy shingles
Sure.
or has a water leak. As
Yeah.
long as you know what's there. That's the whole point is knowing what's real, what's an actual problem, what's a concern for the future, not raise all kinds of red flags because you don't understand what this is or you haven't seen this kind of construction or what is this ICF foundation or it creates chaos. And
Yeah.
it's one of the most frustrating things to deal with because it's so hard when it's your clients. You're trying to give them that best possible advice, but they want to bring in the uncle or the relative or the
Right.
neighbor that knows better, and you know where this is going.
Yeah, this is a common thing. I mean, if anybody who's bought and sold real estate in the past or has been on a Reddit conversation about real estate and stuff, this is something that's very common. Is that having the correct professional involved really can make or break a deal.
All right. So another interesting thing I think we should talk about before we wrap this up, the question that we're getting from everybody, which you can probably guess, is where's the market headed?
Where's the market headed?
It
Yeah,
is a tough call. Obviously, if all of us had a crystal ball, we wouldn't be sitting here doing this.
we'd
We'd
be
be retired on
millionaires.
a beach in
Exactly.
Tahiti somewhere. But we can look at what do we see? What do we feel in the marketplace? And obviously, what's happening south of the border has a big impact on us. That's a big variable, as we're all aware. We don't know which way they're going, left, right,
Yeah,
up, down, who knows what, World War III, four, five. But just even with some stability coming back to the marketplace,
yeah,
it is going to take us a while to get back to normal, right? I mean, right now we have 7 to 8 months of condo inventory sitting on the market in Toronto. What that means is if no new listings came out and we continue to sell what's available at the rate we're currently selling,
Right.
it's going to take the better part of a year just to
Get rid of all that
back to
inventory.
normal. So
Correct.
we're really in a weird place with condos. Detached homes have stabilized a bit. I think things are stable.
Yeah. I mean,
It's a little bit of a buyer's market. It really depends on where you're at. Price point makes such a big difference. You know, the stuff in the middle is doing okay. The stuff on the real high end comes and goes and fits and spurts because typically those people don't have mortgages, don't need to sell. They just sit on the property till things are better.
yeah.
Things at the bottom end are much more dynamic and transient, depending on if you're in the east end or the west end. But I'd love to hear what your feeling is and what do you think is going to happen through the balance of this year?
This is the, that's the $1 million question this year, especially. Uncertainty aside, we can't control what's happening south of the border. We can't control, geopolitics in that regard. What we can see here in Canada, yeah, for the most part, is that interest rates have stabilized. There might be some movement down, I think. This is my guess only. But at least we're still in that good area, a good territory of interest rate. So affordability for a lot of buyers is there because the rates are generally not bad at all. We got spooked by these super high rates over the last 18 24 months where rates were hitting 6 7%. But guys, historically speaking, you go back, our parents will tell you, oh, I remember when I was paying 18 20% more interest rates. That was a long time ago, forget that. But even when I bought my first home 25 years ago, I was paying about 5.5 6%. We got we got spoiled with those low rates of 1 2% and stuff, and that was historically. I don't think those rates are ever going to come back. But on average, I think we're going to see things between 3.5, kind of in that range, 3.5 to up to 4%, which is not a bad rate overall. So in that regard, I think we're good there. I was talking to a mortgage broker, one of our colleagues here. Her husband's a mortgage broker from TD. He was actually saying that he's quite busy right now with pre-approval applications. So when he's busy for pre-approval, there is the idea that 3 months from now there'll be more buyers in the market, so that
Prepared
would
and ready to go.
they're prepared, ready to go. It's a good sign when you're seeing applications going in for pre-approvals and stuff, that there's going to be a good sign. It's a good idea if you're a buyer to consider it, because you're locking in a rate they'll hold, and if the rate drops, you'll get the better rate, whatever it is, when you're ready. um, but it also is a good sign for sellers as well, that there might be more buyers out in the market. Now, is that the case? Only time will tell. I think we're played by. I'm looking at the window here, and the reason I'm pointing is the weather makes a big difference, especially
Sure.
this part of the year, right? Where it's a snowstorm right now. I'm looking out the window, and so that affects certain things. But I think overall in the year, I think we're going to see better activity than normal. It's going to stay balanced. I think there'll be opportunities for buyers and sellers if you're priced correctly. And like you said, in certain markets, we did a deal in November. The house had 27 offers on it,
Right.
and went for actually more than our seller anticipated.
Yeah. There's always the standout property.
There's always a standout property, although, and then we've got other houses that we have seen good activity in terms of showings, but we're just not getting those bites because buyers now have the luxury of time on their hand. So buyers, listen, it's not a bad thing. Now is a great time to get into the market, because you do have the opportunity to sit back, really think, get you're not being pressured or forced into making a quick decision, right?
I think we're going to bounce around for the next 5 or 6 months. I think we're going to see some little wins. We're going to see a little bit of a spring market peak, as we always do, because the
Yeah.
grass is greener and things get excited. But I don't think we're going to see this really rapid recovery,
No.
just because we're always going to be working with this big inventory backlog that's going to temper things.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to see this bouncing around, even if rates go down, or I mean, I'm sure the US Feds are going to at some point fire their guy and bring the rates down, but I don't think that's going to directly affect us. Over time, though, I think 2 years from now, people are going to look back and say, this was the time I should have bought. We
Absolutely.
don't have speculators in the market today, which is why it's slow and steady.
Yeah.
But for the people that do have the funds,
Yeah.
not not trying to flip something, but this is an interesting time to get in on some of these deals, because there are people, unfortunately, that are underwater.
Yeah.
There are some great deals on some really interesting properties. Would I ever go out and buy a no bedroom studio condo?
No.
Never.
No.
But there are 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom things that are starting to become available.
Yeah.
That they're great properties because of the market influence, they're selling way less than they ever have.
Yeah.
Those are interesting.
Yeah.
I've been talking to some clients of mine. They're saying, hey, I have 3 kids, 2 of which are going through university now.
Yeah.
I got 1 in high school. We're thinking about doing something for them in the future and say, look, this is an interesting time to get into something that's a 2 or 3 bedroom condo that they could stay in when they have their first job down in the city.
Yeah.
And the timing of that, if you're going to have that for the next 4 or 5 years, it could be really interesting speculation. That makes a lot more sense.
There are some incredible opportunities out there for buyers. There's no doubt about it. And if you are looking at condos in the city, yeah, I mean, it's a great time because the inventory is so high. There are a lot of sellers who are kind of stuck, and there are a lot of investors who are just looking at it like, look, I'm not going to be homeless, but my investment unfortunately didn't make the money I had hoped for. So they can take it as a business loss. Whereas the buyer who's especially willing to live in that, or is looking to rent and live, or occupy the problem, they are definitely in the driver's seat when it comes to housing. Single family homes, townhouses, semis, detached, all that. It's good. There's again still great opportunities. And sellers, it doesn't necessarily mean you got to give your house away. It depends on when you bought the home, right? If you bought it at the peak of the market, yeah, unfortunately, in 21, 22, it's a short-term
It's not the
window.
time to move.
It's not really the time to move. But if you've bought the house, 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, you're still making a profit. You're making less of a profit. But we often talk about, Brad, you like the word delta. The delta, if you're buying something, you're probably going to be getting that for a better price anyway. And if you're upsizing,
It's a great time to
usually
upsize.
that delta is a little bit better. So, the example my clients in Etobicoke who purchased a home, they bought a home where they got a great deal on it. They probably got it for 200,000 or 300,000 what it was worth, a few years ago. But they did sell for about $100,000 less than what their house was worth, 2 or 3 years ago. If you look at the difference, they're still ahead. They've now actually probably
Right. The
saved
gap 3 years
the
ago was a
gap
lot larger.
100%. And so they've done well, if you ask me.
That's great. I think this has been an interesting little conversation we've had. This is our kind of
This is our
our
our inaugural podcast. It's not always going to be real estate talk. We might start talking about I don't know what we had for dinner the other day.
Listen, we got clients that asked us to do this. I'd love to hear feedback. What do you want us to talk about? What do you think's interesting? What do you find interesting?
Yep.
And we should do this on a more regular basis.
Sounds good, Brad. It was
But for now,
I think great start to the year. We want to wish everybody a great 2026. Is it too late to say that?
I don't know. We also need a tagline.
January
How do we
19th.
sign off?
I don't know.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, whatever it may be. But
we'll catch you on the next one, I guess. Have a good one.